just in the home stretch of the first layer of texture using this homemade tool through some plastic sheet. Again, the plastic sheet is there just so we don't throw up those big burrs of clay. Just softens the edges a little bit. And what I'm doing to keep the pattern from looking too regular is I'm giving it a little twist in between. And a reminder that this is just the first layer of texture. We're going to brush this down. We're going to add some wrinkles over top, and we might do some more of these pock marks over top of that again, and just layer up subsequent applications. So there is a limitation with this tool because it's fairly large on the end. So when I have a low spot like this, I'll just go in with this little ball tool. Again, trying to be relatively random with not only the placement but also the pressure, and then this finer needle. And just along that kind of valley that my multi-tip tool was not able to reach. So I think we're good on that initial layer of texture, but we don't want to leave it as this really rough marked up area. So we might go back in later and add some really aggressive texture around the chin, maybe on some of the cheeks. We could scar it up a little bit more, but we don't want to leave the whole surface like that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to rake across these textures back and forth to tone them down a little bit and to fill in some of those marks. So we end up with an uneven surface, but something that's a little more flesh-like and not so aggressively pocked across the entire surface. So just a quick side-to-side comparison. This side I've raked down. Ended up, as I've gotten into it, of using a combination of brushes more than the rake, just because of the amount of changes in direction on the face. The rake is better for some wide open areas. It's a little hard to manipulate in around the eyes, but so we have that surface versus the original surface that we haven't raked yet. So again, lots of character, lots of life to that skin surface here, but it's not quite as extreme, doesn't look quite as artificial as this side. Just a quick interlude how I'm dealing with the difference between this panel and the really rough looking flesh that I'm modeling beside it. Because I don't have any color variation, it all has to be contrast of surface. And so much like the demo, just been going in and carving the basic shapes out first. I'm just adding a little variety to this area here. It looks just a little bit too regular, so I'll start with some larger cuts. Again, thinking about the primary shapes and forms first. So that will break that up a little bit better so it doesn't look quite so mechanical. Then I'll take this tool and dig a couple trenches, lines that are a little bit deeper. Leaving some of those little bits of grit behind, but getting rid of others. Smack the camera once in a while. Maybe one deeper line there. So now what I'm going to do is take the one of these coarse brushes that I've cut down so that it's quite stiff. I'm going to brush along the lines first, and then I'm going to go back and forth on them, kind of fill them in a little bit just by pushing clay in. Now again, I've kind of thrashed the texture underneath, but that's okay. That's why we're always talking about layering things up. So I'm happy with that basic shape now. Then we can go in and put in some of those finer lines. Trying not to control them too much. And maybe brush those down just a little bit. And then a few more really light, just crossing them up. Just very gently applying some pattern. Now again, because I've brushed against that smooth part, I will hit this with the sponge. And I want as much contrast as possible between those two surfaces. Okay, so that's how I've been approaching these really gnarly areas. So I think we've reached the end of what I wanted to achieve with this particular piece. Since our last update, I've just placed those temporary pupils on again. I did really chew up this ear just to contrast it with this, more slick ear that's part of this panel, and just continued on with the with the wrinkles. Tried not to go too overboard, even though that's my tendency. And I did put in a scar that starts here and bridges the lip and up into the eyelid, just for, again, another area of interest. I've said multiple times, if this was a full production piece, or if this was a piece that I was going to take a mold from and cast in a permanent material, I would certainly put some more time into refining some of the areas. But for what the purpose was for this piece, this is a good place to stop. One of the things that stopping here will allow me to do is, this is a teaching piece, a demonstration piece. So when we ever get back to the point where we're teaching face-to-face, can do a little bit of work on this piece with the students, so they can see it up close and experience the material firsthand. Again, thank you so much if you've made it this far in the videos, or if you've just magically skipped ahead to the last video. However you got here, thanks for following along and playing along. I hope you've learned something or gained some insight. I know I certainly have by going through the process. I do with every sculpture, whether it's learning something about the material or about the anatomy. In this case for me, a little bit of both. I always learn more about anatomy every time I sculpt something somewhat realistic. Also a lot about the monster clay, particularly the monster clay gray, which I'm a huge fan of, would highly recommend it. I am going to continue to produce videos on this channel. There won't be any teaching based videos specific to the animation and visual effects program until the fall of 2020, when that semester starts back up. But what I am going to move to now is some videos that document and describe some of my process and some of my thinking as it relates to the miniature diorama pieces that I do as part of my personal studio practice. So I'll be moving to that in the next week or so. So again, thanks for following along. Stay safe, have fun, and hope to see some of you in person real soon.